Hello, everyone out there. Thank you for being here. Thanks for fighting alongside me for a better world, for a sustainable world, for a world where you can walk down a path and actually see a live animal, like a real animal, just walking around, enjoying things. Protesters storm BlackRock's offices. We will be going into that. I'm also going to explain a little bit about who BlackRock is for the uninitiated. We'll also be getting again into the leaked documents from the Pentagon that have come out from the Pentagon about the war, the proxy war in Ukraine, various other aspects. But I now have a sneaking suspicion that there's something about this leak that is not right, because it is getting covered by all of the mainstream media, and that is a giant red flag. I'll get into that topic in a minute as well. Also, RFK Jr. running for president. He's announced he will be running against Joe Biden for the Democratic primary. Let's talk about that. Also, Biden, speaking of him, has just put up an Italy-sized, an Italian-sized, no, literally the size of Italy, chunk of the Gulf of Mexico for oil drilling. Because, drilling for oil has just gone so well for us. It's just always going great. We're going to get into that. And as well, Macron says Europe should not follow the U.S. or Chinese policy over Taiwan. Yet again, so Macron, obviously a piece of shit. You all know about the French protests. But every once in a while, there's some cracks in the relationship of France being a vassal state to the United States. I also want to talk about a bank shutting off protesters' bank accounts. This is getting into a really scary territory where big banks, corporate banks, will just shut off protesters' accounts. I'll be talking about that. In Salt Lake City, and I felt like this is a good one, even though I usually talk about broader issues than this. Salt Lake City, the Great Salt Lake is drying up. It's almost gone. 73% of it is gone. And they're doing nothing about it. Absolutely nothing about water conservation. They're really not changing the fact that Salt Lake City will be lakeless soon. Meanwhile, they're busy fighting against trans rights. That's what's really, because in the scope of things, that's what matters in Utah. So yes, I'll be talking about that. Also, a little bit more on the bill to ban TikTok that actually has nothing to do with TikTok. I mean, it would ban TikTok, but it doesn't have the words TikTok in the entire bill, because it's really about just restricting you and everyone else online. The CIA has complained that they were blindsided by peace agreements in the Middle East. They've been blindsided by Saudi outreach to Syria and Iran. The CIA is just horrified that peace is just being catapulted at them from every angle. Also, the Vatican. Vatican? That's when the Vatican happens again. The Vatican has renounced the doctrine of discovery, which is responsible, or at least supported, the endless genocide, rape, stealing of resources, stealing of entire areas of the planet. And they just now, the Vatican thought, you know what? Think that's not a great policy. Think it's not really doing us well. And there is a large protest worker strike by the faculty at Rutgers University, the largest, actually the first time in their 257-year history. I'll get into that, all of that stuff, all those stories. Most of them you're either not getting on your mainstream media or you're not getting them correct from your mainstream media. All of that will be here today. Thanks for joining me. Please make a point of clicking the thumbs up, leaving a comment, clicking subscribe. This is the full hour. Part of it will be live streamed on many platforms, but the full hour will be live streamed on rumble.com/leecamp, and now as well locals, which to get to that is leecamp.net. It'll just take you straight there. My locals page. It's kind of like Patreon meets Facebook. Hope you'll join me there as well. All right. So let's do this. Also, if you want to leave a comment about this, I have a question for you. I also have a Twitter vote going on, which I'll show you right now. Oh, man. Well, actually, all right. We'll do this story first. Then we'll get to the storming of BlackRock because I've already outed this story. I've let the cat out of the bag. Well, I mean, what was she doing in the bag? Who puts a cat in a fucking bag? What the fuck, man? You stop. Don't put the cat in the bag. And then you wouldn't have to let it out of the bag, asshole. All right. So here's the topic I want to talk about. And also, you can vote. You can vote for this on Twitter at Lee Camp, but you also just put your thoughts in the comment thread. It doesn't need to be on Twitter. Something suspicious going on with this leak, which I have covered. I have covered the last live stream about this massive leak coming out of the Pentagon. It's been revealed on. That's a weird screen view. It's been revealed on social media platforms is where it's been leaked. It shows a lot of things about what's going on internally in the Pentagon, about this proxy war in Ukraine. It reveals many other things. But here's my suspicion. It is covered everywhere on the mainstream media. Here's from The Hill, which is a neoliberal bullshit site. Key takeaways from the major U.S. intelligence leak. A trove of purported Pentagon documents have appeared online in recent days. Are the leaked documents authentic? Most people say that they are. What's in the files? According to the New York Times, which first reported on the leak, the materials also indicate the U.S. has been spying on not just Russian, but also Ukrainian leaders in an effort to monitor the war's dynamics. And I covered all this in the last live stream, as I said. So this is nothing. This part is not the new part. But additional documents include U.S. intelligence agencies' analysis based on classified sources about Russia and several countries, according to the Washington Post. Some materials reportedly appear to show how the U.S. tracks Russian forces with satellite imagery and where the Central Intelligence Agency has recruited some agents. The Pentagon said it is actively reviewing the matter and has made a formal referral to the Department of Justice for investigation. So here's my problem with all this, is that it's really been covered by the mainstream media. This story is everywhere on the mainstream media. It is even like you go into like Apple News or one of those, aggregated sites that only shows you pro-U.S. empire propaganda. You go to one of those sites, they're like, it's story number 2. And here's my problem with that. Any real leaks, that are at least really harmful to the U.S. empire, to the ruling class, it's not that they won't get covered at all, but they will either get ignored or the leaker, the whistleblower, will be attacked. We've seen this again and again. Some of the biggest examples are Julian Assange, of course. Initially, they acted like they were working with him, but once he started really revealing the internal intricacies of the functioning and the war crimes of the U.S. empire, they have been prosecuting him, and torturing him ever since. The Nord Stream revelations were essentially not covered at all by the mainstream media. The revelations that the U.S. blew up the Nord Stream pipelines between Russia and Germany, that was basically not covered at all. Then it became such a big story that the mainstream media couldn't ignore it. And then they started pushing forward the various other propaganda lines. One was that Seymour Hersh sucks. Another was that, the U.S. investigated it and they think it might be pro-Ukrainian people that did it, like some fucking neo-Nazi in his Doc Martens jumped into the Baltic Sea and swam down there 250 feet. And, So they didn't cover it legitimately at all, the Nord Stream pipeline explosions. Or they covered the explosions. They didn't cover that it was done by the United States. Twitter files has largely been ignored by mainstream media, showing that Twitter, at least pre-Elon Musk days, who knows what it is now, but was essentially an arm of the U.S. intelligence agencies. It was, or the arm of the U.S. intelligence agencies was up its ass. That's another way to phrase that. It showed that. It showed that they have that they were the Russiagate was completely false, et cetera, et cetera. All of that was basically ignored by mainstream media. I covered on this last live stream a couple of days ago that Matt Taibbi, one of the journalists, was never brought onto mainstream media to discuss it. And when he finally was, just last week on MSNBC, they spent the entire time attacking him as if MSNBC does anything resembling legit journalism. So Twitter files, another example. Snowden, obviously attacked, ostracized, stuck in Russia, because if he were to ever get anywhere near the United States, they would have him locked in a deep, dark cell for the rest of his life. Chelsea Manning, imprisoned for many years, and really tortured, because solitary confinement is torture. So again, all of these are major leaks. They're major stories, and they get... The leaker gets destroyed, and the actual story gets a tiny bit of coverage or gets completely ignored. Another example of complete ignoration is the word I just created. Complete ignoration by the mainstream media. OPCW whistleblowers revealing that the Syrian chemical attacks were bullshit. 4 OPCW whistleblowers have come forward to say the reports were not legitimate, that they were altered, that they were changed, and all of those whistleblowers were forced out of the OPCW. All of that has not been covered by mainstream media at all. At all. I mean, that is a major... That precipitated the U.S. bombing in endless. I mean, we still bomb there sometimes in Syria, and Israel still bombs Syria. The Epstein revelations. Not covered at all until it became such a large story that they had to cover it. At that point, they cover it while minimizing it. So they cover that Epstein is they pin it all on him. He's the mastermind. It's just him, doing all this child sex shit. They sometimes would have a brief mention of the other people on his list, like Bill Clinton flew on his plane, and Alan Dershowitz, and Prince Andrew. But other than that brief list, they don't cover the fact that Epstein was not the top of that pyramid. He was part of he was higher up, but he was part of a much larger scheme, sexual blackmail scheme involving many. And they didn't really dig into how much Bill Clinton was involved, how much, Alan Dershowitz, how much all these other Bill Gates, how much, Prince Andrew. I think Prince Andrew has largely been canceled, kicked out of the monarchy because of social media basically investigated how much he was involved in. And then the lawsuit they couldn't deny. But so even while it gets covered, it gets heavily minimized. This leak seems to be the opposite. Please feel free to throw in extras in the chat. I see someone posted Aaron Schwartz. Thank you, Joe, Jeremy Hammond. There's a long list, and I'm not getting into all of them. So I'm not trying to ignore any of these other leakers, whistleblowers that have been atrociously attacked and maligned. So here's what the vote is at right now on whether I thought I'd ask everybody. I thought I'd crowdsource it. Are the new Pentagon Ukraine leaks completely legitimate? The options I gave were yes, 100%, no, basically completely not, or partially legit. Yes, 100% is now only at 15.6%. No and partially legit are pretty close, 44% and 40%. That's on my Twitter at Lee Camp. But I want to hear your thoughts in the comment thread here as well. And, this, when you've been studying media as long as I have, and maybe as long as some of you have, something like this starts to look very odd. You know the system, you know how it works. So here are a couple of reasons that the U.S. might have either done this intentionally, or it came out, these leaks are coming out unintentionally, but the U.S. is highlighting them for a variety of reasons. Either of those could be true. That this could be a legitimate leak that the U.S., basically the people that give the marching orders to the mainstream media, and I get that it's not like some red phone goes off in the top of CNN and he says hello, and they say, "This is that other government agency," meaning CIA. "This is the other government agency, and we'd like for you to talk about those leaks, but make sure you don't say A, B, and C." I realize it's not like that. It's more like these people call their sources. Their sources are either willing to talk about it, don't want to talk about it. They say, "Oh, that's all bullshit." With the Nord Stream bombing, it was probably they called their sources, and the sources inside the Pentagon and CIA said, "No, we didn't bomb the Nord Stream. What are you? What would we? No, 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 no. We don't know how that happened. Maybe it was a clog. Maybe it was like sometimes like hair and just like a lot of just like a chunks of shit just get lodged in there, and someone might have thrown like a comb or something down those pipelines, and then all three of them just because it might have been three combs and they all got with hair and they all got stuck and they blew up simultaneously at the bottom of the ocean. So does that'll happen. Anyway, so there's multiple options for this. It could be that they intended for this to come out and they did it intentionally. And here are some of my possible reasons for why that could be. It does seem crazy that the Pentagon, the U.S. empire would reveal anything about themselves. But one is that these leaks show, according to a lot of these mainstream media sources, show that the U.S. is heavily has infiltrated heavily Russian military, Russian higher echelon. And so that could be done in order to make Russia nervous. Just they act like it's a leak, right? Because if they were to just say, "Hey, we've infiltrated all of Russia," Russia would never believe that. But if you pretend it's a leak, you didn't want to get out. "Oh no, why did this come out? That we have infiltrated all of Russian government and military." That's the only way that they think they'd get Russia to believe that. I don't know whether it's true or not. I'm not taking a stance on whether it's true or not. But so you could want this leak intentionally in order to make Russia very scared and skeptical and paranoid. And all of a sudden, the higher echelon of Russia and Russian military is afraid to, discuss anything, work together. So that could be part of it. Another one could be that I have been talking for several weeks about how the Rand Corporation report, the Rand report for that really sets the talking points and the marching steps for the marching orders for our for our U.S. empire, for the ruling elite in the tops of the Beltway, as they say, the tops of D.C. They don't always set it, but they said it a lot of the time. They said in their, and it's an internal report, but it's not hidden. It's not like it leaked out, but they said in their report that the U.S. should start socializing, which is a nice term for social engineering, the concept that this war in Ukraine, the proxy war in Ukraine, needs to end. And I've discussed that several times, so I'm not going to dig into it deeper. But the reason they want it to end is because all of the things the U.S. wanted to get out of this proxy war, they've either gotten or they're not going to get. So it's kind of like the futility, the usefulness of this proxy war is waning for the U.S. empire. And so if you've gotten what you wanted, heavy sanctions on Russia, blowing up the pipelines, etc., or the stuff you failed to get, the sanctions have somewhat backfired, Russia's still tight with China, the stuff you failed to get is still impossible to get. So they want to wrap it up because it's draining the U.S. empire to continue this proxy war. So this could be part of that process, social engineering, the idea that it's okay for this war to end. One way to do that would be to reveal that Ukraine is not doing well, that they've got their heads up their asses. Oh, this leak came out showing all these things about Ukraine struggling and everything. And it could be a way of beginning this socializing. Now, I think that one is probably less likely than the former, the fact that the U.S. would want the Russia to believe it's all infiltrated. And then the final reason they could do something like this is that it is a real leak. It's a genuine leak. And the U.S. military, the Pentagon, et cetera, are very upset that this stuff is coming out. Yet the reason the mainstream media is covering it night and day is because they're covering it in such a way as to set the way people think about it, to set the propaganda, to set the way it should be viewed. They did this with the Snowden files. Once it was revealed that you couldn't cover up everything Snowden had revealed. Once it's not like they could have ignored it. So then they started trying to set the talking points, set the parameters of debate. And it became all about Snowden. It became a little bit about surveillance, but not a lot. Mainly about surveillance, mainly about Snowden, mainly about how could this leak, mainly about where he is. Is he working with Russia? Those became the talking points. That's the acceptable debate, not whether we live under a basically fascist government that is surveilling everything we do. And so they set the talking points of an actual real leak. And that very well could be what's happening here. All right. But again, I'm interested in your thoughts. I don't claim to know everything about everything. So let me know if you think this leak is fully legitimate, half legitimate, or completely made up about the U.S. military, Ukraine. It also showed some things about somewhat spying on Israel and other allies. So it does seem like there's things in there that the U.S. government would not want people to know. But all right, let's get to the protest against BlackRock. BlackRock I did a long segment on them for Most Censored News. BlackRock is one of the most powerful entities in the world, and it's hardly ever talked about. BlackRock owns the planet. BlackRock has trillions of dollars in assets that it then uses to control things the way they want to control things. And this is not a secret, by the way. It's not like I was able to surmise this by digging up some records on Freemasonry. No. Shit. Fucking phone shit. Fuck. God damn. This is public, but the mainstream media will never cover it. They rarely ever discuss BlackRock. BlackRock, billions of dollars in assets. Trillions of dollars, right? What? Yeah, trillions of dollars in assets. They are massive, and they're often at the top, one of the top three investors, shareholders in just about everything you think is powerful in the United States. So most media companies, Disney, Apple, Comcast, I was about to say CNN, but yes, they are in CNN, but CNN's parent company is what's more important. And so they are, and they own one of the largest stakes. It's usually the top three are usually them and Vanguard. Vanguard is very similar to BlackRock, also trillions of dollars in assets, except Vanguard is not, they're the people that make up Vanguard, the people that invest in Vanguard is not public. So in fact, Vanguard is more secretive, but they often have they're often a notch or two below BlackRock in these shareholding listings. But, and so, of course, these entities are not going to do anything that goes against the higher-ups of BlackRock. Like CNN or Comcast are not going to suddenly reveal anything that harms BlackRock. So BlackRock, and this is what it means to live in an inverted totalitarian system, ruled by the anonymous corporate state. Nothing our government does is going to go against BlackRock because, yeah, they might not be funded directly by BlackRock, but some of them may be, but I don't think most of them are. Instead, most of them are funded by something that BlackRock owns a percentage of, owns a large percentage of. A good example is Blackstone. Someone mentioned BlackRock, aren't they the real estate company? Well, Blackstone is the real estate company that owns, they're the number one, they're the largest landlord in the country is the best way to put it. They're the largest landlord in the country. more rental properties than any other entity. But the number one shareholder of Blackstone is BlackRock. So you see how that works? And it helps do a lot of things. It helps to minimize the media coverage, because Blackstone might be coming after you to kick you out of your house, but BlackRock isn't. Like, you don't normally see them showing up at your door. So it helps to minimize the bad media coverage, that type of thing. And of course, I just mentioned some of them. I'm sure they're the top shareholder in agribusiness. I'm sure they're one of the top shareholders in big oil. Actually, I know they are in big oil. I'm sure they're one of the top shareholders in deforestation. I covered that as well. They're one of the top shareholders in big pharma. So they're one of the top shareholders in everything that you think is wrong with the United States and unfettered capitalism. BlackRock's at the center of it. And then, of course, you can get into how evil those other corporations like Blackstone underneath it are. So there haven't been that many protests against BlackRock. By the way, CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink. Literally, last name means a detestable person. Like, literally. It's like his name is Larry Detestable Person, and he runs BlackRock. So, but the French are smarter than us, apparently. They understand BlackRock is at the heart of so much evil. And, oh, sorry, wrong one. And they stormed the headquarters, BlackRock's offices in Paris, because BlackRock owns a lot of the pensions, which these pension reforms, which is a nice way of saying abusing workers, extracting more of your lifeblood, your labor, your existence out of you. The corporate entities that are sucking you dry. France wants to do that for 2 more years. And by the way, if the French are upset at 62 to 64, that's changed from 62 to 64, imagine how angry Americans should be, considering 67 is the full retirement age in the United States, if you're lucky enough to actually retire from your wage slave job at any point. So these massive protests, I've been covering those as well across France. They continue. But I like this one because the French know what the fuck they're doing, and they are protesting. They're protesting in France, and they ransacked to some degree, or I think they just occupied it. I don't think there was much ransacking that went on. There should have been some ransacking. I mean, why not? Some pillaging, some ransacking, some shenanigans. Some kerfuffling. Video shared on social media showed protesters entering the Le Centurial. Yeah, I'm pronouncing it like it's Spanish and not French. Office block located near the Opera Garnier. I have no idea how to pronounce that. Opera House, holding red flares and firing smoke bombs. About 100 people, including representatives of several labor unions, were on the ground floor of the building for 10 minutes, I guess, until the police came charging in, chanting anti-reform slogans. The meaning of this action is quite simple. We went into the headquarters of BlackRock to tell them the money of workers for our pensions, they are taking it. And then they get into the nationwide. And this is the extent of a coverage on something bad about BlackRock you'd ever get. It's like one paragraph, one little 2 sentences in Western media. About the people who stormed BlackRock's offices. And again, this should be done across America. It should be done in many places. People protesting, the likes of BlackRock, the likes of Vanguard, these massive entities that our mainstream media acts like don't exist. They're barely mentioned. But they are they're in many regards the top of the pyramid of control, and the people that are putting their money into BlackRock in order to get more money out are the creme de la creme, to use more French, of the ruling elite. But these are the times when we need to see this. These are. People are exploited, extracted. And yes, I mean, literally, we are extracted. As human beings in this country, we have our lives extracted from us. We have our happiness, our freedom extracted from us. Our ability to labor is extracted from us. Most people don't get to choose a passion, to do what they love. Most people have their lives sucked away from them by the disgusting vampiric fangs of the egregiously rich, and that inequality is worse than it's ever been, worse than the first Gilded Age with the robber barons. It is worse now. You have 3 dudes having the same amount of wealth as the bottom 50% of America. You have 64% of Americans saying they struggled in the past year to buy basic necessities. You have millions of people either homeless or housing insecure, while we have 17 million empty houses sitting around our landscape that could be easily used. We live in a post-scarcity world. This is another important point that is ignored by not just your mainstream media, but a lot of independent media. We live in a post-scarcity world. We live in a world where if things were allotted accurately and well to everybody, you could have everybody eating well. You could have everybody clothed well. You could have everybody with a roof over their heads. You could have nobody fearing for food, for medicine, for health care, for a easy existence. All of that could be done. We don't live in a world where there is a shortage of those things. We live in a world where there's a pretend shortage of those things, false scarcity. That's why you see people living on a fucking sidewalk in one of the richest countries in the world. That's why you see people saying they can't get healthcare in one of the richest countries in the world. That's why you have people saying they couldn't get an education in one of the richest countries in the world. It is false scarcity. And if we understood, if people across this country understood the real entities, the real human beings and the real corporations and the real BlackRock's and Vanguards behind all of this, then hopefully they'd be standing up and fighting back in a different way. And this also goes to show, which I'm about to talk about electoral politics. Blah. Blah. But this also goes to show the somewhat meaninglessness of our electoral politics. I always say, yes, you should vote because they'd love nothing more than for you not to vote. However, it shows the meaningless of our electoral politics. These guys that run BlackRock, that have their money in BlackRock, that benefit from BlackRock, that are extracting your wealth, your pensions, etc., from BlackRock, they vote for, I mean, not just vote, they fund Democrats and Republicans. They do both. It often doesn't matter to them. They want to own whichever candidate ends up being in the office. So if the evilest of the evil are funding both parties, then why are we pretending like the two are different? All right, so now I want to move on to Robert Kennedy Jr. said he's going to run for president. And I'm going to tell you why he will never be president. I'll give you that news in a second. But I also want to talk about how the mainstream media has covered this. They barely have, by the way. But so he announced that he put in the paperwork, actually. I don't even know if he's done a speech about how he's running for president. I don't think he has. So he put in the paperwork to run for president as a Democrat against Joe Biden. So he would primary Joe Biden. And now there's obviously a lot of things, a lot of issues that he wants to tackle. I don't agree with him on everything. I agree with him on a lot of things. I don't agree with him on everything, but I will say that, he said his number one goal in his statement about it, his number one goal is to separate corporate America from the state, which it now owns. I'm paraphrasing. And basically his goal would be to drive a stake through the heart of the inverted totalitarian structure, which is ruled by the anonymous corporate state. If you cut the corporate from the state, then you have crush the inverted totalitarian structure. So in the largest way, and you will never hear that from, you probably won't hear it from anybody else who's going to primary Joe Biden, but you also wouldn't hear it from anybody who's covered on mostly on mainstream, regularly on mainstream media as a actual contender. They're not going to say anything like that. So, I have issues with, like, I'm anti-mandate because I think it harms the people with the least among us. That doesn't mean I think that every vaccine around the world is bullshit. And I think if you believe that, then you need to do a little more reading. So there's a nuance there, and people don't like nuance, right? You have to pretend you're all one thing or all another, and so. On that issue, I'm sure I have disagreements with him. Probably have disagreements with him on some other issues, but I do think it would be very interesting to watch him blow up the. I'm not just rooting for the blowing up of the Democratic Party, because I also want to see the Republican Party blown up. But I don't mean literally. Nobody strap a bomb to your chest. I mean metaphorically blown up. But anyway, just watch how the mainstream media covers RFK running for president. This is, and they barely covered it all, some little article here and there, but wait, it's muted. Jesus. These fucking pop-up shit show windows can go. God damn. Okay.
He is an outspoken anti-vaccine activist. Robert F.
All right, now that I actually have it working, Jesus Christ. Dude, you got all this fucking sticky thing jumping all over. You got to play whack-a-mole with a goddamn video to try and hit. I wanted to.
Kennedy Jr. is running for president. The former environmental lawyer submitted his paperwork with the Federal Election Commission yesterday. Kennedy is an outspoken anti-vaccine activist known for spreading the debunked theory that vaccines cause autism. The son of late Senator Robert F. Kennedy is the second Democrat to join the 2024 race. Self-help author Marianne Williamson announced in March. President Biden is also expected to announce a bid for re-election.
All right. Now, here's my issue with this is I assume RFK Jr. has a lot of stances on a lot of things. Yes, he's focused recently on vaccine stuff, but he's fucking covered a lot of things over his years. He used to be an environmental lawyer, covered a lot of things. Yet this is all he is to the mainstream media, right? Is one issue. Now imagine if any of the horrible shit that Joe Biden has been responsible for, that was like part of his name. Like if it were war criminal Joe Biden is announced he'll be running for president, or proven racist and longtime friend of Strom Thurmond and sexual assaulter Joe Biden is running for president. Like imagine it was part of his name. That is how the mainstream media deals with RFK Jr. It is completely different. You notice she said Joe Biden there. She didn't say war criminal Joe Biden. She didn't say overseeing some of the largest oil drilling in the world, Joe Biden. So other candidates and Marianne Williamson gets just self-help guru. That's how she was defined right there. So other candidates get to have either their name just fucking shit. All right. Other candidates get to have their name just stand alone, but not in this case. And it would be the same of anyone who is outside the acceptable empire's talking points. Any of us. If I were to run for president, if Matt Taibbi, who was just attacked on MSNBC, were to run for president, go down the list. If you're outside of this, of the mainstream media's talking points and what is allowable, you are a pariah and you will be attacked even in just your name, like your name. It would, like, if I were to run for president, it would say Russian comedian Lee Camp or something. Even though I'm not Russian, never been Russian, never a day in my life have I been a Russian. Have I been a goddamn Ruski? So that is the way they cover this in order to delegitimize him from day one. And by the way, this is not even why I'm going to tell you he can't win. I'll tell you in a minute. So again, here's New York Times. It's in the title. Apparently his name now is vaccine skeptic. Even though in the let's see if they have that other sentence. Here it is. Mr. Kennedy wrote on Twitter that his priority would be to end the corrupt merger between state and corporate power. Now, if that were his main goal, that is a fucking important goal. And New York Times know that they made that the headline. You know, man who wants to end corrupt corporate state merger, RFK Jr. running for president. That sounds pretty good to most people, right? So that's how they do their propaganda, is they want to define him as one thing, and they want to stop him early. But here's the real reason that what would happen. And first of all, they would try and rig the primary, or they will try and rig the primary if he gets any traction. They'll rig it the same way they rigged it against Bernie Sanders. As the DNC said in court, they said, we have no obligation. We have no legal obligation to have a legit primary. We could go into a back room and pick the winner in a smoke-filled room. Those are the DNC lawyers in front of a court said that. So that's number one. And number two, why he can't win a primary against Joe Biden is, and I was one of the few that covered this, honestly. I don't say that about many things, but I was one of, honestly, I think 3 to 5 people on independent media who covered this when it happened. The DNC, this past election cycle, when Joe Biden was running and Bernie was running again, they did something that got very little coverage at the time, and the way they worded it made it sound a little confusing. But it said that the DNC can stop anyone, even the winner of the primary, from being the candidate for president. So you got to win the primary, right? Then you become the candidate for president of the Democratic Party. Even if you win the primary, it said it could stop them from being the presidential candidate if their writings and speakings are not in line with the Democratic Party. Now think about that. That means the DNC, the corporate Democrat fucking cabal that runs the Democratic Party, can at any time say, yeah, that guy, that man or female, that dude or lady is not a legitimate Democrat, so they're not our candidate. End of story. It could be after the primaries. You could have that whole fucking 2-year lead up, everybody voting across the country, going into the fucking machines and the pushing on the black box machines who it is you want, and all of that happens. And the winner, they try and rig it. They try so hard. They almost failed to rig it against Bernie 2016, but they try so hard to rig it, and then they become the candidate. And at that point, after all of that, and this is what I believe they would have done actually in 2020 against Bernie, but at that point, they can go, yeah, about that whole primary thing. So the things you've been saying aren't really good for us. So yeah, you're not legit Democratic Party material. So you're not our candidate. That's now in the laws of the DNC. And so I can guarantee you that if an RFK were to get to that point, that he would have win the primary. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think it's still legitimate to run, to force issues out there, to have people talk about things. He can force people to talk about it. But as I often say, electoral politics at the federal level should be about 5% of your political discussions. About 5%. So don't Don't spend your time. Don't spend more than 5%. Spend your time on local issues, on breaking things down, on the fucking fascist levels of the state, protesting things, getting in the way of business as usual, highlighting all of the ways that people are creating the new world we want to see, highlighting the way they're stopping oil pipelines, or they're creating mutual aid, or they're creating giving societies, or co-ops, or the changes that are being created. Spend a lot of time on that. I'm not saying you can't spend any on the federal shit, but it shouldn't be most of what you're talking about. All right. By the way, the rest of this live stream. Thank you all for joining me. The rest of this live stream will be at rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp. It's free to go over there. And you can also join now at leecamp.net, which will take you to my locals page. It's free to join me there as well. All right, I'm putting the link to the Rumble stream there in the comment section. You can join me right now, and we will continue. I've got a ton more stories to get to, so I hope to see you there. Even if you aren't going to do that, if you're so lazy you can't make it to the other, you can't click that one button, I hope you'll become a member at leecamp.net. I hope you'll head over there. You'll get my new ebook when it comes out, Dangerous Ideas. That'll be out, I hope, within a month.